Good evening, and thank you for being part of our coaches show. My name is Kevin Jordan, and I'm the activities director here in Little Falls. On behalf of Mark Deal, the Flyer Media Productions, and myself, we thank you for coming out and being part of this recording. Flyer Activities and Flyer Media Productions would like to thank Johnny and the staff here at Johnny C's for hosting our tonight's event. Please join me in giving them a big thank you. Earlier this summer, Flyer Media Productions put together a show about the 1979 Baseball State Championship. The show included a conversation between Don Sorensen, Randy Tabbitt, Kenny Garrison, and the voice of the Flyers, Jack Peck. At the time, none of us knew it would be Jack's last media appearance. The stories and memories that were shared were priceless and brought back many wonderful memories for team members and fans alike. That experience spearheaded the creation of the Flyer Coaches Show. It is the goal of Flyer Media Productions and Flyer Activities to put together a limited series of episodes on the history of Flyer athletics through the eyes of our coaches. We are starting tonight by focusing on the 60s and the 70s. In the spring of 2024, we hope to record our next episode, which will focus on the 80s. Our plan for tonight is to divide the show into 3 segments. Our first segment will focus on the memories of our distinguished panel of coaches. Then we remember some of their colleagues who couldn't be here tonight. We will be ending the evening by offering you in the audience a chance to ask questions of the coaches. I would like to thank the former Flyer coaches who accepted our invitation to join us here tonight. There's not enough time to tell all of the stories these gentlemen could share. We are grateful to each of them for their time coaching here in Little Falls, and we are very blessed that they have chose to join us this evening. I would like to introduce our coaches for this evening. Please join me in welcoming John Allen, Ben Benson, Dick Kalshaw, Sherwin Goodrich, Ron Heinenkamp, Rod Miller, Mike Ratzlaff, Don Sorensen, and John Wagner. Finally, I would like to thank our moderator for the evening, the man who never met a microphone he didn't like. The guy who just had to be different and record a strikeout when everyone else was drawing a walk in the historic 7th inning come-from-behind victory in the 1979 Class AA State Baseball Championship game. Please welcome Randy Tabbitt. Take it away, Randy.
Well, thanks for that memory, Kevin. I was just looking at that picture over there. I was just happy to have a uniform, for God's sake. So anyway, it was it was a fun time, and getting together with Jack and Kenny and, of course, Don was a fun time this summer. It was a great opportunity. But here tonight, I just want to welcome everybody to the Coaches Show, as well as thinking about the tremendous honor that I have to be able to sit amongst these gentlemen. Yes, distinguished, extinguished, or whatever they are certainly mentors of mine, and it was a great opportunity for me to have had most of them in some way, shape, or form, honing my baseball skills, I'm sure, right from the get-go. But it's a tremendous honor for me to be here tonight and have this opportunity. About 250 years of coaching right here. 250 years, and Colshaw's got most of those. So without further ado, we were thinking about questions that we should ask everybody, and you could have individual questions, and I think we'll just lay it out there and generally start with some basic memories. I was approached by a young man here tonight that said that he would like to go first, only because it's his birthday tomorrow. Mr. John Allen will be 83 years of age tomorrow. Whoa. And I think what we'll do is we'll just start out this way. I'll start with John, ask him a general question, and then we can just chime in, and anybody can say what they want about what they can remember and go from there. And if you can tag team onto that or add on to it, that'd be fantastic. So, John, to start with, I know that we were talking about you running in college against Bob Hayes. You were telling me about those opportunities to see Bob Hayes from the backside as he was smoking up. Yeah.
Just how he looked, yeah.
Yes.
Just real small.
Yeah. So what accomplishments, John, did you have with the teams that you coached? What kind of things just kind of stand out in your mind? Those memories of not only the successes, I mean, obviously failures as well, but successes as well as the athletes that you can remember. If you want to just kind of take it from there.
Can I do it a little different way?
You can do it any way you want, John. It's your birthday tomorrow.
How I even got here.
There you go. Let's start that way.
It was a lot different. 1963 is what we're talking about. So it's really a long time. A lot of difference. No girls sports, just boys. And in boys sports, like at the high school, there was football, there was basketball, track, and baseball. That was it. There was none of the stuff. I look at the stuff now, you can't even hardly read the list of all the things that there are. The thing that also is kind of interesting is that the number of kids that we had in class. Remember, this is at the middle school, where the middle school is now. Take the swimming pool off of there and a couple of little add-ons, and that's where the high school was. 10 through 12, 10, 11, and 12, 350 kids per class. Double the number of kids that you have now in that little building. It was really crowded in there, and it was a totally different situation. But anyways, at that time, in those days, the soup, Paul Hansen, he came down. The soup came to you and asked you if you wanted to come to Little Falls. I didn't even know where Little Falls was. I came from Marshall in the Southwest. I hardly ever left town. I didn't know where Little Falls was. I had to look it up on a map so I could drive there. But anyways, they needed a science teacher. They needed coaches. So Paul comes down there and he gets that, and then I came up and visited in the summer, and I was in the football. I was going to be sophomore football with Ron Cavadas. You guys probably don't know that name, but some of the older guys do. Yeah. Donnie and I do.
He was my coach. Yeah.
Yeah. Were you back there in that time period? Okay. Yeah. Ron Cavadas was a coach. Well, then he says to me in the fall, he said, I'm the track coach too. He said, I don't really like coaching track. I don't know anything about it. You want to be the track coach? So that's how I got to be the track coach. And I was coaching football then, sophomore football, but we didn't have hardly any kids. Remember, we got 350 kids per class, sophomores, juniors, and seniors, and they're all in the football, out for football that there are. And we can't scrimmage because we only got, well, we got 22 kids. If everybody showed up, we had 22 kids. Otherwise, we had to take the Cheetah twins, two skinny little kids that were the managers, and we had to put them back in defensive halfbacks. They weren't dressed for football or anything. They just stood back there so we could get 11 guys going against 11 guys. I was a sophomore coach, and there wasn't any sophomores, so then I ended up, well, Alan, you take the kickers, while we didn't, we had a kid that kicked, maybe some, well, probably don't know him, but his name was Kluka. He could kick pretty good, so I called up Malowski at UMD and said, well, we got a kicker here, and he wants to go to school. Do you need a kicker up? Yeah, we'll bring in. Oh, he kicked in college at UMD for a few years. I'm not sure how it was, little small town kid. But anyways, so then I got so I'm the track coach, head track coach. So then in the summer, Cavadas then left, and when he left, then there was no football coach. So I went in and saw the superintendent. And I said, well, because I was wondering where I was going to be in the fall. I said, who's going to be the football coach? Well, I guess that's going to be you. So now I'm the head football coach and the head football coach and the head track coach, and then later on that was, but anyways, that's how I got to be the coach of those couple coaches, and Donnie ended up with baseball and basketball, and we ended up coaching about 3/4 of it for a while. I'll quit there. That's enough.
Well, who else would like to share where they came from and how they got it? That's a good way to start, I guess.
Well, I came in 1964, and Frank Studley was the athletic director, and I remember him coming to me and asking if I would give rides home to the football players after practice, because they didn't provide buses at that time. So I showed up the first night, and this was early in my career. I'm from northern Minnesota, and Frank comes out and he loads 6 or 7 kids in my car, and they're all from the Sobieski area. I didn't know where the hell Sobieski was, and these kids were telling me, turn here, turn here, turn here, and I got to the last one, and he said, see ya. I ended up in Sauk Center. I didn't know where I was. But that was my introduction to the football program, and like John says, I was assistant baseball coach for a few years, and then Jack McGrath left that program, and I was also hired to be Myron Ollie's assistant in basketball, and he was forced out because of some medical problems. So I ended up being the baseball coach and the basketball coach. But as John can tell you, shortly after that, the school board made a policy you could only be head coach in one sport. So John stayed with track and I stayed with baseball, and we went from there. And a few years later, they were scrambling to find coaches for different things because girls' sports came along, which was a very good thing for our program and our kids in our school district. But the fact of the matter was that at that time when they said you could only be head coach in one sport, they were running out of coaches because we didn't have the personnel there to handle it. But luckily, it kind of worked its way out, and those girls' programs became stronger and stronger and stronger. But that was my first recollection of coming to Little Falls. I ended up in Sauk Center, Minnesota.
TikTok?
What's that?
The TikTok?
I've been the TikTok a few times.
How about you, Mike? Where did you come from? And
Just like John, southwest Minnesota, and Collie, sorry. And grew up on a farm down there with 5 brothers and no sisters, and so it was a rugged growing up when you're the second youngest, but wouldn't trade it for the world. Went to Nebraska first to play football, then went to Augustana. I was 17 when I went to play at Nebraska. Wasn't even shaving yet, but that's water in the... Anyhow, we went to Augustana. I met the best thing that's ever happened to me in my life, and that's my wife at Augie. And we got married, and I got a job at Augustana Academy, and I was a head basketball coach, assistant football coach, and the school was an experimental high school. We had kids from all over the nation, and there were kids who the next step for them was going to reform school. And they were all tough kids, but Milwaukee, Los Angeles, all over. And on the basketball team, I had 6 black kids, 2 Native Americans, 1 white kid who was a missionary's son. But our kids were wonderful. You talk about, when I came to Little Falls, I remember Jim O'Toole saying, well, now, we got some real discipline issues here now. When I went to the middle school, I'm like, I don't think so, because our school got closed. We had a riot. Nancy's in the dorm with me. We're living in the dorm. She's teaching art in Sioux Falls. And I said, I think I can handle it here. But it was backward that I got here. Was I had applied for a job in Hutchinson because the school closed, and was the finalist with another guy. Well, the other guy didn't even happen to be Dave Wetterling, who was a elementary teacher at Lincoln. And he got the job in Hutch, and the guy in Hutch recommended me to this job. Because the market was really flooded with candidates. That was the only way I was going to get a job, to get lucky. And so we ended up here, and the rest is history. 71, and most of my coaching was in the 70s was at the middle school. And that's when I ran the football program after Rich Weigel retired from it. And the big dilemma was tackle football or not for the middle school age kids. And I was, having played the game a little bit, I really hated seeing 6th graders, 7th graders, and 8th graders, beating up on each other, especially when you got a kid who's 190 pounds, and an early mature, and the team, they put him at fullback and carries the ball all the time, and all these little kids. We had a couple occasions where, so Jim O'Toole and I sat down, and I said, there's got to be something. We came up with weight divisions that I think made sense at the time. And we had some kids come through that program, and the middle school that were part of very successful football teams down the line. They didn't have to be beating each other up for, in their middle school years. One of the funniest stories for me, we had a lot of kids out at the middle school, 7th and 8th graders. We went, and our one game of the year, we had 2, Piers and Royalton. And we went to Piers, and I played 95 kids. I'm not exaggerating. We had them lined up in the sideline. I'm trying to remember who was coaching with me at the time.
I was there.
Wagwood. And remember that? We just lined them up, and 11 men here. Okay, we didn't know if they were a center guard or what. They went out and played. Of course, we got beat by Royalton and Piers. They played about 15 kids, but that was how I got initiated into the athletics here. Then 80s, and you're going to talk about that some other time, that's when I started coaching at the varsity level. And then after John retired, I became head track coach. And after Donnie retired, I got to follow in his footsteps. So it's been a great fit for my family and for myself. So.
Good. Wags, why don't you tag off on that one?
Well, I remember those football days when he said, who's going to play this time? And all these hands go up in the air. And okay, you. He was calling the plays, and I'm trying to get people into the game, and Weigel's standing on the bench watching the game. It was pretty hectic.
It was a nightmare.
Everybody had to play.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so
Well, that was it. Yeah, you think the parents going to come down there and then they don't get to play in that? So. But if you think about the numbers back then, it was like, well, the school was big. I mean, middle school, I can remember having phy ed classes at the middle school in those early years of 40 to 45 kids. And you try to get activities and stuff for them with that. A lot of kids.
Where did you come from? How'd you get here?
I went to UMD, graduated, and I lived in the cities. And I applied at Hopkins, and I came in number 2. They went with speech in the background, not phy ed. I taught art and phy ed. And so then there was an opening in Little Falls. I didn't know where it was either, but I came up one Saturday morning in '73 and walked in the door and met Ristine, O'Toole, and talked to them for a while. Then Keith came in, Keith Olson. He was the head of the department, and he took me on a tour, and then I came back and they said, the superintendent would like to meet you. And they told me how to get there, and I went home with the job. It was a 1-year job, and I went back to my golf course. My dad and my brother were there, and I said, let's play golf. It wasn't a very good ground, but I was pretty happy I got the job. And after the first year, well, the teacher that was on leave, she decided to take another year, so I got the second year. And then after the second year, she resigned, and the other one wanted to take off. The other 7th grade teacher wanted to take off. And they were waiting because I would have tenure, and then they finally said, would you like the job? I said, of course. And that was the beginning of 75, I think. So I started on a 1-year contract, and I stayed there for 33 years. And I did a lot of the coaching with the middle school, with the football and track, basketball. And we were playing, I think my mic, oh, there it is. We were playing practice on lightweight football between the sidewalks on the east side of the school, hoping that nobody would crash into the building.
John, were you there when we went over with now Colburn's?
Yeah.
We went over, that was a field, a farm field.
Oh yeah, we played in Coburn's where parking lot is.
The sidelines were stumps that they cut trees.
Oh, it was full of trash, and we're playing out there. And then in '75, I volunteered to help with the Bantam program. Did that for 1 year, and then I moved into the midgets with Dwight Nelson, the band director. And we coached 3 years there, and then 1980, the high school program started. We started with 12 games, and we played on our massive rink on the west side, J.C. Park. And the fans came over, they stood in the snowbank. And we had no Zamboni, and between periods, the Congo line of the shovelers, all the parents got out there, shoveled the rink, and then we had somebody drive around with a fuel tank filled with hot water. And they spread that on the ice, and that's how we survived for a number of years until about, I don't know, somewhere in the early 80s, '83, they opened up the Exchange Arena, and it was natural ice. And matter of fact, the first game, they were tying the nets that afternoon. And well, the first time we saw the ice was the same time the Wadena team saw the ice, and we skated to, I think, a 7-7 tie that game. But then the rest is history after that.
Well, Cully, Minneota's back in the state football.
Yes, they
So
are. They
why,
are
why,
phenomenal.
don't, why don't you tell us a little bit about how you got up here?
First of all, I was in the right place at the right time. I got here about the same time as John and Sorney did. And when we came in here, and I got here quite by accident, I'll expand on that. But we had athletes that were just absolutely phenomenal. That 67 football team, oh my, I mean, just absolutely phenomenal kids. And I remember Louis Flippy setting up the car ride thing to go out and recruit in the Sobieski area. And we had the Pekarsky boys, potatoes and Melvin, and then our backfield, Mike Brady. Remember Barry Sanders for Detroit? He was a version of that. He could go sideways as fast as he went that way. And Jerry Frank at the other halfback, just absolutely phenomenal. The wideout was Kurt Bailey.
Yeah.
And he was faster than those guys, actually, I think.
Yeah, it was
And
different.
I mean, just absolutely phenomenal. John Austin was the quarterback.
Yep.
Timmy Raymond was center, and his brother John was one of the linemen. And they were just, Lonnie Leibel was one of the ends. And they were absolutely, I mean, phenomenal. Just absolutely phenomenal. And they were just raw athletes that didn't, we didn't have any pursuit angles on defense or anything like that. They just tackle that guy. And then in basketball, of course, I coached with Don and then Al Bauman, and we had a lot of success, and we had just unbelievable athletes. And the year after we won the state tournament with Walker Lawrence and those kids, the next year we probably had more talent, and we got beat in the semifinals of the state. But we dressed 12 kids, and 10 of them could dunk, and that was 76, 77. Just phenomenal athletes. To be a successful coach, you got to be at the right place at the right time, and that's certainly my case. And then I was just here at the right time. I came from Minneota, Minnesota, and went to St. Cloud State, and graduated. And my first barely. And then I coached down on the Iowa-Minnesota border at a place called Canton, Minnesota. And they hired me as head football coach, if you can imagine that, John. Huh? And we were playing 11-man football. And I had 13 kids out the first year I was there, 14 the second year. 3 of them were 8th graders. And we were playing 11-man football. I didn't win a game in 2 years. And then, yeah. And then I went to grad school out at South Dakota State and started applying. And one of them was Little Falls, and Paul Hansen was the superintendent. And he called me down at South Dakota State and said, I'm going to be down that area, can I interview you? And I'm thinking, oh God, yes you can, you know. And so he came down there to Brookings, and Bev and I and our first kid were living in a beauty shop in Brookings. And he dialed my number, and he says, I'm over by the college, can you come over and interview? I said, yeah. I went over there and walked up to a car, and Paul was sitting in there, and his wife was laying in the back seat, sicker than a dog. And so he said, I can interview you right here. And I said, fine. So he come over and sat in our car, and he's interviewing me, and he's going through a folder. He says, you're Dick Cole? I said, yes, I am. And he interviewed me, asked me what my background was, and so forth and so on. And I think it was because his wife was sick. He says, you're hired. He didn't want to go any farther. I went back and told Bev, I got a job. And come up to Little Falls, and he called me in his office, and he had my folder out there. This is just God's honest truth. I shouldn't tell anybody this. My folder out there, and he says, I got another Dick Kalsha here. And it was my cousin from Slayton, Minnesota, who had just graduated from Bemidji State. And he's going through all this stuff, and he says, and he looked at this picture, and my cousin was half bald, and he says, "You're not Dick Colshaw." I said, "I'm Dick Colshaw." He actually hired me, and he thought he was hiring me.
Right place, right time.
You got to be in the right place at the right time.
He pulled it off.
Donnie says that he's got something he wants to say about Dick Colshaw here.
When I was head basketball coach, Paul Hansen was our superintendent, and he had a policy that Little Falls had to play one of the county schools each year.
Oh, God.
Well, this night we were playing Swanville, and at halftime they were just kicking us from one side of the floor to the other. So we get in the locker room, and those of you that have been in the locker rooms at the middle school know how small these coaches' offices are. Well, Cully didn't want to hear my halftime speech, so he goes in the coach's office and he closes the door and he starts pulling out the desk drawers on the coaches, and lo and behold, there's a starting pistol for the track team in there.
Heard about this.
And Cully's sitting there and he's clicking this gun, and there's a blank in there, and it goes off. And it just echoed in that room, and he comes running out of the coach's office. And all of our kids look at him, and he thought he was shot. He was kept looking for holes. Well, we went out the second half and just played Superman basketball and just kicked on him. So I asked Cully, I says, "Well, what act do you have for our next game, Cully? Because I want to save one of these." So he damn near shot himself with the cap or the track pistol.
And that was the same halftime as you punched a hole through the chalkboard.
Yeah, they had a portable blackboard in this locker room, and I was so upset. I punched the blackboard, and it's not really slate or anything, it's kind of cork, and my fist went through the board, and I couldn't get it out. I didn't want to go out in the gym the second half pulling this backboard out there with me, but one time up at Staples, though, we took the varsity down to get dressed while the B squad game was going on. And Cully comes in, and there's no B squad with him. Well, there was a big referee from Fergus Falls by the name of Stan Fetters, big guy. He was a highway patrolman. And I asked Cully, where's the kids? Where are the B squad? Oh, the game's still going on. I said, "Well, what are you doing here?" And he said, "Well, Fetters kicked me out." When I talked to some of the fans, he didn't kick him out. He walked over there and grabbed him with one hand and lifted him up and said, "You're gone." And so Cully's marching down and comes in the locker room. What an assistant coach I had.
Those are great. Benny, how'd you get to Little Falls?
Well, I grew up in a farm up north of Staples, and I wrestled there at Staples during my high school career, and then I went up to Bemidji State, and I wrestled up there for a while, and I graduated in '69, and I went down, I was offered a job in the metro area, and I was offered the job as head wrestling coach down there. And that's not a real good situation to move from the farm to Bemidji and go to the metro area and be head wrestling coach. The students were entirely different than what I was used to, and so it got to be quite a challenge for me. But I really think the challenges made it so that I had a very successful career after that. Anyway, I was, as I said, the head wrestling coach down there, and the program was not very good. I had one or two individuals that were really good, so we could get into the state and qualify our participants. But my last year down there, we were wrestling a St. Paul, I think it was Tartan, and we were weighing all our kids in, and my heavyweight kid, nice kid, but he was a special needs kid, and went time to get him on the scale and couldn't find him. And so finally, I found him in the shower. He was hiding in the corner in the shower, and I said, "Come on, you gotta weigh in, come on, you gotta weigh in." "I'm not gonna wrestle that kid, I'm not gonna wrestle that kid." Well, anyway, I had the opportunity then to move up to Little Falls, and I came here, I think it was 72, the fall of 72, when the building first opened up, and I was hubby's assistant wrestling coach for 17 years, and then took over the head job, and I was on Donnie's baseball program, and I just really had a wonderful, once I made the move and got away from the cities, I really feel that I had an excellent career here.
Rodney, you're right there.
Well, I'm from the Red River Valley up by Moorhead, and I went to Moorhead State, got a job. First job was up at Roseville, Minnesota. And first year I was there, I got offered, another young teacher came there at the same time, and he got offered the head basketball coach. And so he asked me if I wanted to be an assistant. And I looked at him and I said, you know, Roseville isn't exactly known for a basketball school. And he said, we're going to change that. And by the time I left 5 years later, we had changed the attitude of basketball. And at that time, when we left, we had hockey players coming to basketball games and cheering, and vice versa. Basketball players going to hockey games. So he knew what he was talking about, and we did a pretty good job. And then I got down here in 77, moved here with my wife and my daughter, and I've been here ever since, coaching primarily football with, first of all, Joe Solis, and then Bob Just, and then Mike Olson, and then Jack Marmon. And I also coach baseball and some basketball in the middle school with somebody that I worked with here. And then I even had 1 year of tennis. So, and it's been a great run. Really enjoyed it.
Lots of diversity there.
Huh?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ron, how'd you make it from Melrose, Minnesota?
28 and
There
27.
you go. It's a crooked road, right? Yeah.
It's really not that hard, Donnie.
Had to go through Elmendale.
Yeah. There's a lot of little towns between here and there. There's one sign out there too about says, if you're any connection to the government, don't come in here. Now, I was fortunate enough to get drafted into the military when I was looking for a job, and so I basically was okay. Well, I'll go then, because it was a draft, as Sherman knows. And I just graduated from college when I got my draft notice, same day. So graduated from college, same day. Absolutely, they were good back then, because what they did was they kept track of you, and if you didn't have full credits, they come and get you. So you had to make sure you took full load of classes, otherwise you're going to come. So then I graduated, and that literally I got home, it was in the mail, okay? And it did say, by the way, for those of you not in the military, greetings from the president. It says that. Greetings from the president, Richard Nixon, my friend. And so anyway, I got drafted, put in my 2 years, and came back and actually moved to Little Falls before I had a job here. And on first day of workshop, I got a call saying that, I forget the guy's name now, but he had left to go back up to the range. One of those rangers that was here, you know, and not Caracas or whatever his name was, but Caracas? Not him, not him. Not Danny. Kiss a Ranger, Good Morning was his song in the morning. But anyway, so I got offered a job, but I think the reason I did was because I'm from Melrose, and Melrose had a streak of success in basketball in the late 60s, into the early 70s when I got hired here. And Little Falls wanted that. Now, not that I had anything to do with the basketball program, but they wanted it here. And you notice how Little Falls started getting better in basketball right after I got here in the early 70s. So I'm going to take some credit for that. And so I was involved in a variety of things we'll talk about a little bit more later, but I coached a lot of basketball in the elementary level, and I started coaching in the softball when that started late in the 70s. And my first year I was a single freshman coach with 33 girls. And it's very similar to what you guys are talking about. Okay, you got swinging bats and things like that, and you're going to go out there and try and get 33 people to get organized to do something. And we had about 3 broken bats with tape around them and stuff like that. And the beauty of it was, some of you people know Mike Schlins. Mike Schlins was head coach. And Mike said, "The spring we should have shorts." So we had shorts, playing a sport where you slide and also where it's cold. And so we went up to Wadena and got off the bus with snow falling, and we were wearing shorts because Mike Schlins had ordered shorts for all of us. So anyway, that's kind of basically how I got to Little Falls. After my term of service, like I mentioned, I got the job here. And 33 years later, I decided that was enough, and it was a great run. And I want to just do is pay compliments to not only the people at this table, but the crew that we worked with back then really made education for Little Falls awesome. It was the kids got a lot out of it because there were a whole cadre of people. These coaches and also all the staff worked together because it was a great place for kids to be and get together. And a little side note, I had a job offer before I got drafted. He said, "If you don't get drafted, we'll hire you." In Ascov, Minnesota, where someone was at that time, Phil Force. Ascov, he came there from there. He was there at the time. I would end up in Ascov if I hadn't gotten drafted. But my lottery number was too low, so that's how I got here.
Sherwin, you kind of have the same story, except you didn't have to go too much further than Melrose. I mean, you're from Little Falls.
Right. I joined the school district in 1952, I think, as a kindergartner. And I had John. John talked about being a football and track coach. I had him for both those and really inspired me. Went to college, wanted to become a track coach more than anything. And then I figured I had to also teach if I was going to get a job. So my father was an English teacher in the school district, so I thought, I'll try English. And so I was an English teacher, and as soon as just like Ron said, I graduated. I got my diploma in one hand, my draft notice in the other hand. So off I went to Vietnam. When I came back, it was middle of the year, so I started subbing. And I subbed Royalton, a few places around, but in Little Falls a lot. And one day Jim Hill called me in and said, "We have an English teacher who is unmarried and pregnant and will be leaving. Would you like to fill in for her for the rest of the year?" And I did. And meanwhile, I'm coaching track with John, and we also ended up, I was his assistant in football too. At the end of that first year, Jim called me in and said, "Well, you know, that corner of the building didn't burn down, so if you want to stay, why, go for it." So it was 33 years of teaching and 35 years of coaching. I was John's assistant men's coach, and then when Lynn Halstead gave up girls track, then they offered it to me. But that's, again, we're talking about in the 80s now. So, but I do want to mention and give credit to Lynn Halstead. All she did for women's sports was great.
Just about everything.
Yeah, she started just about everything. Donnie would know better than me, but I know, track for sure. Yeah.
So if I had to ask if anybody has an accomplishment or a story of an accomplishment that they had, personally with the team, that if they could share something about that particular situation, a state tournament bid, a section championship, just beating a team that you'd never beaten before. But if there's something that just off the top of your head, so I'll just open it up and you can go from there.
Well, I want to talk about Ben's program. Now, Ben was the second wrestling coach that Little Falls ever had, Bill Hubbard being the first. And I think I should get a lot of credit for that, because when I was at the junior high school, the old junior high down here, there was no junior high program. So Paul Hansen asked me if I'd coach wrestling. I never wrestled before in my life. I saw it on TV, where they slam each other on the thing and throw on the ropes. So And the mats we had were those gray mats that you use for things, and we tried to tape them together on the gym floor, but that didn't work. But anyways, a couple of these kids that were in the program got up to the high school, and they went out for wrestling, and Hubbard says, "Where did you learn that move?" Well, junior high last year, Sorensen taught us. Chicken wing. So I was kind of the groundbreaker for the Little Falls wrestling program, which transferred from Hubbard to Benson to Mike Hendrickson and where it is today. So, Ben, I think you owe me a lot of your success there.
I agree with that, sir, for more reasons than one. Anyway, I will relate a story about why I think that sports are so valuable for kids. And one instance that I remember very clearly was we had a wrestler that by the name of Timmy Lemire he was a very good high school wrestler. And he was seated number one. He was seated number one in the region. And anyway, he was in the semifinals, and he was getting beat by this nobody. I mean, I shouldn't say a nobody. The kid wasn't. If you're going to wrestle, you're not a nobody. But anyway, this kid was not a noted wrestler, and he should not have been even in a match with Timmy. Well, here it is. He's down 5-2. Third period. Now this is in the go-ahead round, so he's down 5-2 with 10 seconds to go, and we're not sitting there very calmly, and he's getting beat with 10 seconds to go.
You were never sitting down.
Anyway, so he catches a kid in a Granby, and he puts him on his back and gets 5 points, and he wins the match, and then goes ahead and wins the region. And then he beat the number one kid in the state in the first round of the state tournament. The kid that was rated number one. Well, it kind of went south for him, but it did the other kid too. But anyway, he went on to be a really well-known surgeon up at the Crosby Ironton area. And I had the opportunity to go elk hunting with him a few years back, and we got talking wrestling, of course. And he said, "You know, Ben," he said, "every time I get into a really tough situation in a surgical thing," he said, "I think back on that Granby roll, and that's what gets me through." So, there's been a lot of kids over the years that have really said that the kids in the wrestling team, and I'm sure it's in all sports, that have come back and talked to us and said, it's because of wrestling, it's because whatever sport, that's had a lot to do with my success later on in school or in my career. So that's what's really good about high school sport.
I'll tell you something, when we used to be in the old Central Lakes, Cambridge was in our conference. And if any of you have never seen this guy operate at a wrestling match, you're really missing something. The antics that he went through. Well, at a conference meeting one time, the superintendent from Cambridge, his name is Ray Hoheisel, came up to me and he put down a blank sheet of paper and he says, "What do you want?"
He was from Piers.
He said, "I'll give you anything you want if you let us hire your wrestling coach for Cambridge." Because he brought so much life and vitality into that wrestling program by what he was doing. He was known throughout our whole conference with what he was doing on the sidelines, and he was a spectacle to watch, I want to tell you that.
He wrestled 12 matches every night.
Other stories. We've got a ton of them. Colshaw, you're over there reading. You brought your book. You thought there was a test today or what? Yeah.
No, I just want to bring up the 1998 state AA champs in girls golf. And at that point in time, there were two divisions. There was AA and single A. And we were the smallest school in the AA. And these girls just absolutely kicked it. And in '97, which was Katie Brenny's junior year, we were second to Edina in the AA tournament, and she lost to a girl by the name of Hillary Holmeyer, who eventually became Hillary Lunke, and our group that a bunch of us guys golfed together, and we were over in Long Prairie that summer playing, and this Hillary Lunkey was in the state tournament, or the U.S. Women's Open out in Oregon, and she beat Annika Sornstrand. And Katie had lost to her as a junior at Bunker Hills in Coon Rapids, and there was a controversial thing on the 14th hole where they gave Hillary Lunkey a drop from behind a tree, and Katie got beat by her 2 strokes, and we ended up second against Edina. And Hillary Lunkey beat Annika Sornström that day. We were over at Long Prairie golfing in the U.S. Women's Open. And then the next year, these girls went down to Bunker Hills again and won everything, and Katie was individual champion. And not many people realize how good these girls were. They were absolutely phenomenal. I mean, I was lucky to have girls that wanted to play golf, and these girls could play. And in 2 years, we were in probably a dozen different invitationals from around the state with all the best teams. We won 7 of them out of about 14 or so invitations we're in, and got to thank Sorensen and Phil for letting me play in those invitations. But they were absolutely phenomenal.
I'd like to just comment about
You were 80, that's right.
not an individual thing, but the fact that oftentimes I heard from kids is that the camaraderie that they felt on teams was something that they really stuck in their mind. It was like, what do you think about at the end of the season? You know, your accomplishments, and you do is you give your 100%, and you make sure that you stepped up when it was required. But the fact that they met people, not only from their own team and got to know them, but other teams as well. And a lot of times ended up college roommates and things like that. To me, that's almost a hidden part of what sports is all about. All these kids would do is meet other kids from other schools and make those connections that they ended up with down the road. And I heard that all the time. And just even simple things as a bus ride and the things they learned from other kids on that team was really important. And so that kind of keys back into what sports is all about, is the fact that it's all the things you learn, all the connections you make, and all the parts of getting yourself out there, putting yourself in a position to lose, but also it makes you a better person because you do that. And I saw that from so many different kids, that really is a difference.
We have a common friend. His name is Gary Addington, and he was the Hibbing basketball coach when they beat the Flyers and also when they lost to the Flyers. Kevin McHale was a junior and a senior. And Gary and I went to school together, and he was a basketball player and I was a football player. Anyhow, we ended up, our family's very close, and when he went up to Hibbing, they had their first child. I remember we drove up there that night and all this, but long story short, we started going on vacation up on the Whitefish chain for about 15, 16 years in a row. Our kids grew up together and all this. Very avid fisherman, outdoorsman, great guy. We would get in the boat, we fished every day. And every year it'd come up, same conversation, how we felt that we coached and were athletes in some of the best time of athletics. You know, if you were a head coach, you weren't expected to be coaching all year, you know? And a lot of that stuff just changed. It was just like as an athlete, you were like, this sport, I'm moving on, I'm going to this sport and this sport. And the advent of 3-sport athletes was very rare now. It's an accomplishment with all the demands that are on these kids. I get it. And it's just a reality of that. It's always in my mind how Gary said that, and when we think back, it was just for the joy of the game, really. And one sidebar, you're talking about basketball, and when you won the state, and the second year, got beat by Hibbing. The third year, when they had Gary Walters and Paul Cameron and all those kids, a very unbelievable team. I was watching the game with Gary and Kevin McHale up in the stands. Kevin was a freshman at U at the time. And Kevin was sitting next to me. He said, You know, Ranceloff, if we hadn't had to play Little Falls in the semifinals before the championship game against Jefferson with Peterson, you know, the commentator for, we'd have beaten the hell out of us. So we were so shy of playing the Flyers that it was just such a tough game. He said, I really believe that. So the sports back then were a little different.
We beat Kevin McHale, who was rated one of the top 50 players in the NBA. We beat him twice. You know. Yeah, I remember we beat him up in Hibbing, and Al told Wakaloris before we went out, you don't quit until you're bleeding in the jock. And we beat him up there at Hibbing, and come in the locker room after Frank had his jock off and he was shoving it in Al's face. Look at the blood, look at the blood.
Just a little example of how important these athletic experiences are to these kids that come through our program. Steve Ham, who put down the suicide squeeze bunt in the championship game, called me sometime last spring and asked if he could come up and sit down and talk about this game. And he asked me to get in touch with if any other players in the area. Well, the only one I got was Randy. Steve Fergine was up in Brainerd, couldn't make it.
Roger.
Yeah, Steve.
Roger.
I mean. So Steve and I met at the Black and White, and it happened to be on the same day of Bill Swanson's funeral. So we met at the Black and White at 1 o'clock, and he just wanted to talk a little bit about that '79 championship game. And Randy came in. It was 6 o'clock before we left that place that day. We talked for 5 hours about the experience that they had with that team and with that game. And just a little sidebar to that, and most of you probably don't know this story, but in the semifinals we were playing St. Paul Highland Park. John Shea is pitching. And we're ahead 2-1. And John walks the first 2 guys in the inning, nobody out. So I'm in the dugout and I look at Darrell Barth, the assistant coach, and I said, well, I better go out there and talk to John. So I walk out to the mound, and before I get there, John puts his hand out like this. You want me to get him out? I said, yeah, John, that's the idea of this game. So I turned around, walked back to the dugout, and Darrell Barth, the assistant coach, says, what'd he say? I said, you won't believe it. And he didn't. Well, long story short, he gets him out, we win the game, and after the game is over, all these news reporters come up to me and said, what magic words did you say to that? I didn't say anything, but John got him out.
All the places that everybody has participated in, or I should say played or wrestled, I guess, you don't play wrestling. No, you wrestle. What was the most difficult place to play, or the most hideous place to play? I know that as a player there were places that you went to and you played baseball in water up to your ankles, or you had somebody that decided that they would leave a surprise in the dugout and defecated in there, and just terrible places to play. Anybody have any places that they just hated to go to, or have an experience where it just was a bad place to play? Anybody?
Record.
Crosby Ironton.
Crosby Ironton, yeah.
Crosby Ironton. And who's the boxer?
Wasn't that the Wook Gym?
Ledoux. You got killed Cully after they upset. How did that go, Cully?
We were up at CI, and that's the year we won the state championship with Wakaloris and those kids. And Billy Silister was the coach at CI. And if you've ever been up in that gym, it's one of those old-time gyms. And it was a great place to play, but that was the only game we lost that year. And it got kind of testy at the end between Silisker and Ballman. and and the CI fans are rabid, and the Little Falls fans are rabid, and it was kind of.
And I saw you with Scott Ledoux.
Yeah, and I'm just trying to pull Al away from getting any kind of a skirmish, and this guy grabs me and turns me around, and he's got his fist up like this, and it's Scott Ledoux, and I'm the boxer, Scott Ledoux. The boxer. That was a tough place to play.
You thought that was an eclipse. That was his fist that was in front of your face.
I saw him later. He played in our celebrity golf tournament out here. And I was hitting range balls with him, with Ledoux was next to me. And he had these long 6-inch extensions on all his irons and woods. So I went over and I was watching him, and he turned around and he looked at me a couple times and he said, "Do I know you?" And I said, "I don't know if you do or not." And he kept looking at me. He said, "CI game." And 1975, he said, "Yeah, you know me." There were a lot of, Central Lakes games and that Mid-State Conference were good conferences, and a lot of good basketball games.
Well, for football, it'd be, I think, St. Cloud Tech. Because we were so far away, and you had to walk all the way over to the field.
Yeah.
And it was so close that you tried to watch out to make sure kids didn't go into the wall when they got taken out of bounds. But probably the worst thing was you walked to the end of the field at halftime, and they had a little hut about the size of this table. You're trying to get 50 kids in there, get drinks and all that. And as you're going by, it's a platform up there. Tech kids are standing up there and they're throwing stuff down at you and your kids when you're walking by there. But it was nostalgic, plus they had some really good football teams too, but it was just a hard place to play. Tech.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
Yeah. So.
That reminds me, Donnie, Mitch, as long as you're grabbing the microphone, I remember a time, I think it was 1978, and we were playing up in Brainerd, and Emil decided that the band was too loud. I mean, if anybody wants to pick that one up, because I remember that as a player, I thought, what the heck is going on here?
Emil, God rest his soul, was a close friend. But what you saw is what you got. There's no messing around. And to a person, I think, that ever had him as a coach, a line coach, just respected the heck out of him. And this drummer was on, every time we tried to call plays, and all this, he's just right there, that city right behind our bed. And this drummer is just pounding on those things. Finally, you just see even just a steam starting to come out of his ears. Turn around and look, turn around and look. Next thing I know, he bolts. He goes back there and he grabs those drumsticks from that kid, sticks them in his back pocket. He said, "I'll give these to you after the game."
I could talk a little bit about another guy who's not here, Jerry Cool. Coach with Jerry Cool, and this gets a little bit into the 80s, but he started in the 70s because he got into, obviously, the basketball program. We were playing in Wilmer, and Wilmer was a little bit rabid. And I don't know the year exactly, but it was early 80s. And all of a sudden, I'm sitting next to Jerry, and I watch the action, I look, and there's no Jerry. Gone. He's like he just evaporated. He's up about 5 rows. Some kid threw something. And Jerry's up there in his face. And fortunately, that's as far as it got. But it was like he was gone. It was just like, the action goes here. No Jerry. He's gone. Similar type of thing.
Well, I'm sure that there's other stories. We've had a few, unfortunately, that have passed on, and Al Ballman, obviously, there's got to be some stories, Cully, that you could. I remember a few timeouts, and there was a lot of talking going on, but there was never anything that really was said, and all of a sudden the horn would go off, and he'd say, "Go get him."
Yeah, his timeouts were legendary, because he would be punching guys in the chest like Sorensen used to do to me, and explaining this and explaining that, and break huddle, and I couldn't hear half it, so I'd ask Januska or Poof. I said, "What did he say?" I don't know. Nobody knew what he said. But he talked, punching. What did he say? I don't know.
The kids would meet after the huddle on their way back out on the floor. Straighten things out.
I could tell a lot of L stories, but we don't have time.
I remember he was the 10th grade football coach, if I'm not mistaken, right? It was 10th grade.
Yep.
And I remember we were out practicing on the field, and all of a sudden, Coach Ballman hollers to everybody, huddle up, huddle up. Okay, we huddled up, and he said, okay, turn your backs. And we turned our backs, and you could hear water running. Well, Al had to pee. He's peeing out in the middle of the field. And he'd just say, okay, break. Let's go.
Oh, God. I remember one time in '67, that was the undefeated team, right? And Hubbard and I were coaching the JV, and we were over at Alexandria, and we had a kid named Jerry Steiner. Do you remember Jerry Steiner? Yeah. And he was playing defensive halfback over there at Alexandria, and it was 3rd and long for Alexandria, so Hubbard hollers at Steiner, Jerry, loosen up. And so
He started
he started doing jumping jacks out there. And I said to Hub, I says, he's loosening up.
I think this is a good time. If anybody has any questions for anybody here at the table, this would be a great opportunity for Stumfer. I know that you've never been quiet about much in your life. Anybody at all? We've got an opportunity here.
While you're waiting for that, let me just comment on a guy who's back there behind the camera in the back. He used to do a lot of officiating. A guy by the name of Dave Gertz. He was an official in a variety of different sports, and one game, you can hear him back there. He's umpiring my game, and all of a sudden, he splits his pants. He's standing there behind home plate, of course, bending over, so he can't have that happen. So he runs over to the dugout, and I've got to do is pin his goddamn pants for him right during a game, so he can continue the game.
We always used to have to remind him that it would be a lower level game because he was getting a lot of reffing for sophomore and 8th grade football. We're the home team, Dave. We are the home team.
I noticed there's a person from Rocori out here, at least one anyway, and the Cold Spring area. I was reffing with David one time. It was, I think, a 9th grade game, and there was this problem with this fan over on the right-hand side over by the Rocori bench, and the guy just was obnoxious and using foul language and stuff like that. So as a referee, what do you do? I flagged the team. I said, someone over there was saying it. It was from Rocori, and I know that was just an awful day. And so, but I was helping out Dave at the time. He was the head.
We've got a question here. Tim Bjorgi.
Yep, I have a question for the panel. I had a very wise friend of mine once say, nothing brings a community together like a natural disaster or a state tournament run. What's your fondest state tournament memory?
Well, I think for the football team, it's got to be the
Who's that
85
guy sitting there
team.
with the girl with the got white sleeves and a jacket? Who is
To
that?
preface that a little bit, we were doing well
Guy
during the
sitting there
year.
with the white sleeves
And
and
then
a jacket. Who is that?
MEA, we had to go up and play Moorhead at Moorhead and MEA. Well, our kids weren't thinking about that game, I don't think much. They were thinking about break, going hunting and doing this and that, so we ended up getting handled pretty well by Moorhead. Well, several weeks down the road, we ended up getting paired with them in the section finals back up at Moorhead again. And our kids came to play, and we ended up beating them, I think, by 6 or 7 points, but it was a heck of a game. Moorhead was tough, but our kids played really well, and the next game we went down, we lost 13-0 to Burnsville, who ended up winning the state tournament that year. But there again was, talk about back on what Colshaw said, we had a group of kids that were just very, very talented, very close, played for each other, were intelligent, and we just had a really big group of kids during that time, and that's what I think turned out to be why they were so successful.
One sidebar on that. Well, our superintendent was even a pretty good field goal kicker.
Yeah, Morehead State, yeah.
And ended up going up to Morehead to stay for a while. There was one play that came, I got to give Bob Just all the credit in the world for, he's scouting Morehead now. We've gotten beat handily by him, as Rod said. And we're trying to figure out how we can compete with these guys. And Bob was watching film, and he got a tendency of one of their running backs, and Rod and I were just talking about this.
Yeah.
Just a little thing in his stance, but just gave away what they were going to run. You know, if it's going to be left or right, or if it's going to be power. And he got Mike Hubbard and those kids, a linebacker, to key on that. And it was like, that made so much difference in the game. Some people say, well, that's like cheating, you know, but it wasn't. And the kids, our kids just played so hard that game. But the game was still kind of up in the air. Not really, but we could ice it with the score. And we're about at midfield, and Fessler has been running right, left, getting 4 yards, 5 yards. Finally, their quarterbacks are coming up. And we had a play, a halfback pass from Fessler to Casey Peck. And I'm wanting to call it. This is where a lot of people said, well, that was a great call. I got to give credit where the credit is due. I wanted to call it earlier. It probably wouldn't have worked. Rod said, wait. So, a couple, 3, 4, I think we got a first down, 3 foot, and he said, this is the time, because we had just run that way and made good yards. I mean, it worked out perfectly, it iced the game, but I can't take any credit for it because it's all his.
One play.
Well, I think probably one of the highlights of my career, I was Hub's assistant for I think 17 years, but one of the highlights of my career was when the year that we got our team into the state tournament for the first time, and we had a really talented team. We had a kid that was pretty chubby kid that couldn't make the lineup. Mark Kaczynski couldn't make the lineup at Christmas time because Craig, I think, Swanson, was our heavyweight, and he just couldn't make the lineup. But what he did over Christmas vacation was put his snowmobile boats on and run the snowmobile trails the whole dang time. He came back after Christmas break, and he could make the 189-pound division. And we won a state tournament that year, and he had to beat a really good kid from Anoka in our wrestleback, and we ended up taking third in the state tournament that year because of dedication like that. So that was really a cool story.
Yeah.
Randy, I'd like to just talk a little bit about, we've discussed girls' sports and the effect it had. And I think one of the things that I observed is, and I'm sure those of you that either had daughters or coaching programs, girls had to learn how to compete. You know, they never had the opportunity. And so when it came, it was like this great thing, but they also had to learn to compete. They had to learn the whole concept of it. And that was, to me, that was one of the greatest things about coaching girls, is seeing them grasp that opportunity, whatever sport it was. They had the opportunity now. And, you know, not having it until, basically it started about the mid-70s, and when sports were added. And, you know, we've kind of felt our way through, you know, Donnie's there, you know, coaching baseball. We got softball right next to it. We've got 2 panels of backstop, and each year we try and add another panel to it. But we were getting there. We were getting an opportunity for the girls to compete, and the girls really took it on. And it didn't take too long to realize what they had, and that opportunity was just, to me, it was just something that was just awesome. It was just that's why I stayed with coaching girls, is because it was creating that opportunity for them.
Yeah, you saw a lot of big changes in the 60s and 70s with girls in Title IX and so on, and it was a great opportunity having a daughter myself in gymnastics, and that competition thing is very, very, very important. Yeah. Did you have a question?
Yeah, one question I have, but we sticking with the 60s and 70s. What memories of former coaches and legends like Louis Philippi, Myron Ollie, and Bill Hubbard? What memories do you have of those three coaches?
Well, I don't know if Larry's Philippi's still here.
He's back over there.
I remember watching his father when he was wrestling. And, you know, Ben put on quite a show, but Louis put one on too. He was down on the main floor, and he'd go out one door by the lobby, and he'd come back in the other door, and he's yelling at Larry, "Get him, boy, get him, boy, get him, boy." And then back out he'd go, and I'm sure he got dry mouth so many times. But it was a joy to watch Louis follow Larry on that wrestling program. That was a great show all in itself.
I remember going scouting football games when I was coaching with John, and Louis and I and John, and we would scout, and on the way home we'd stop for a beer or a burger, and we walk in these places with Louis, and everybody, "Hey, Louis Philippi," oh, and everybody's greeting him, and they'd buy him a drink and so forth and so on. And Hub and I walk out of there and we'd say, "Louis, who was that guy? Who was that guy? Who was that guy?" And we'd say, "Got no idea who they are." But everybody knew Louis.
Yeah. I had Louis as a coach. He was my back coach, and it was back in the old days, and he really put us through the ringer. But I remember when I got drafted and I go into basic training and you got a drill sergeant right in your face just screaming at you, and all these 17, 18-year-olds are just panicking, and I thought, no, I've been here before, that's no problem.
First year I came, I taught it at the old junior high school down there, and Louis was in the industrial arts program. And they were having trouble with somebody stealing out of the Fayette office down gym. So they had a suspect, and Louis put some money out there, and he put this kid underneath the cot or the couch that was in the coach's office. And sure enough, at the end of the day, the money was gone. And Louis talked to the kid that he'd put under the couch to watch who was stealing, and he says to him, "Okay, who was it?" "I don't know, but he had red socks on." But anyway, Louis had a pretty good idea who it was, so he was going to give him a lie detector test. He had this old air pump they used to blow up balls with, and a needle on the end of that hose. Louis had the kid hold the needle. And Louis pumped that thing real easy, and he asked him a question, "What's your name?" And the kid gave him his name. He said, "Did you steal the money?" "No." Louis pumped like mad. That needle went way up to the top. Kid confesses he stole all the money.
I had the opportunity for most of my coaching career to be Bill Hubbard's assistant, and he's been really struggling with some health issues the last couple, 3 years, and he didn't have the opportunity to be here. But I want to mention, I learned a whole bunch about coaching from Bill Hubbard, and you could always count on Bill that his team, when we went to tournament time, his team was ready to wrestle, and he gave them every opportunity to be in the best physical condition that they could possibly be in. He'd do the morning practices, not only the after school, but the morning practices. And another thing about Bill, he was so shrewd in the seating tournaments, in the seating meetings. Now, in wrestling, you see 12 individuals, and so you have to really have your wits about you when you're doing this, and the same way with all conference selection. And Bill had a way of weaseling those guys out of more positions to put us in a really good shape to win the tournament. He was really, really shrewd at that. He was He was, I sure wish he was here, but he was a tremendous individual and a tremendous coach.
I had the opportunity to work with Louis. I taught art, and Louis was next door in shop. We had many arguments, and over the years. But when I went home to my hometown, Excelsior, I met my old baseball umpire. He said, "Where are you?" "I'm in Little Falls." And he says, "You know Louis Philippi?" He's well known around, and the guy was from St. Cloud. He ran into Louis all the time.
I just wanted to make note, we've mentioned some of the different people who aren't here, and I think we should do is comment, and I'm not going to try and name them all, but I'm thinking of people who we've lost. We mentioned Swanee, EJ, Jay Spillum, Denny Flesner, Lynn Halstead, and people that were either mentors, but definitely coaches that were an integral part of the program. And I hate to say those names without possibly missing some of them, but I think, there are stories about each of them, and they played a big part. And it was mentioned a couple times here, it was a prime time to coach. It was a prime time to coach because of the kids coming through. It's a prime time to coach because of where society was. It's a prime time to coach because of the people that we worked with. It just was an optimal, it was just a great group to be with. Everything from, the positive comments to the Buzzsaw Award that some of us were able to hang on to occasionally. But it just, those people played a real part of it too, and I may be missing someone, but I'd like to mention it.
I remember when we were talking with Steve Hammond, we talked about Jack McGrath as well, and I remember traveling as a ninth grade baseball player. I think Benny and Jack were the ninth grade baseball coaches, and things you remember, and it just was a fantastic. I remember Jack was sitting in the dugout, and we were playing at the fairgrounds, and somebody just screeched a foul ball into the dugout, hit him right in the ass, and he had that big voice and that big laugh. It was, how do you, as a ninth grade player, not bust out laughing when your coach just got hit in the butt with a baseball? And it was just fantastic, just a great experience.
I was athletic director when all these people were coaching, and there, like Ron mentioned, there's quite a few others, Al and Jerry and Lynn and Denny Flesner and Jay Spillum, and there were no short-timers in that group. There was no one-and-done coaches. They were in it for the long haul, and they stayed with it, whether their team was on top or whether they were on the bottom or towards the bottom. And they were an easy group to work with because you knew that they had the kids' welfare first and foremost. They weren't in it to get accolades for themselves, but they were in it to promote our kids as best they could and to give them a good experience. And like I say, I was athletic director. I think all of them were coaching at one time or another, and it was just a great experience on my part. And Mike Ratzloff was there afterwards, and Mike Olson also, and I think they would second this, that all these people that are up here now were true blue coaches for the kids of Little Falls, and I want to thank them for that.
And I guess if there aren't any more questions, I think this is a good time for us to have another drink. Call it a day. This has been a fantastic experience. Unless anybody has anything else that they'd like to share.
To show you how old we are.
Yeah, it's an honor, a privilege, definitely. But thanks to FMP and Mark Deal, Dave Gertz. Special thanks to Brad Lager's grandson, Peyton Rocco, on the camera.
All right, boy.
Thank you very
know
much.
what? I got to give credit to his grandfather.
Okay.
He was really instrumental in building the girls program.
Yep.
He, my daughter played for him at the 7th, 8th grade level, and I don't think they ever lost a game in school. But he followed along with Gary, and he could teach. He was always a good teacher, whether it was in the classroom or on the basketball court. I just want to being his grandson is here, he did a great job.
Randy, can I tell one more story?
Yep, you bet.
That's his grandson, huh?
Okay, you know, along with the job of coaching, there's always lessons, and we hope that the kids can learn. And sometimes they don't always turn out to be the best lessons. Because I remember one winter, we were down state tournament, and it was snowing like crazy. And we got about 6-8 inches of brand new snow that night. So we go out, and I'm trying to get the key into the school station wagon, and one fit. And I
Just realized that
I told one.
these are all administrators.
Run back in and get a coat hanger. Because I think this is frozen up, but I think I can get it. So after adjusting and using the coat hanger for a while, I popped the lock on the door and got inside and looked back. No kids' clothes, no duffel bags, no nothing. Wrong car. Break and entering 101.
It's a big city, man. It's a big city.
Not such a good lesson.
They probably use that skill. They probably use that skill someplace down the road. And a special thanks to Johnny Sees and Johnny Sees and his crew tonight. And with that being said, I think that we'll call it a do. Thank you very much, gentlemen. It's been an honor and a privilege to be part of this tonight. Thank you. Do it again sometime.
Thank you, Randy.